Hey guys, and welcome to Reading with Mo. Today we are going to be talking about books that are going to be coming out in the months of July, August, and September that are definitely on my radar. I don't even know if I want to call these necessarily like my most anticipated books because there's quite a few and obviously cannot get to all of these books I'm going to be showing with you guys, but I want to share them with you all so that they can hopefully get a little bit more attention and maybe you'll hear about something that you haven't heard about and it will spark your interest or something. I will try to get to as many of these as I can as usual, but yeah, definitely not getting to all of these because there's something like 30 books I want to share with you guys that are coming out in the next 3 months. Some of them have really beautiful covers. Some of them I'm just really into the synopsis and everything. So let's just get into them. So the first books that I want to talk to you guys about are coming out in the month of July. I would say the majority of them come out in July and August. There's just a few that are coming out, July and September. There's only a few that are coming out in the month of August that I'm into or that are like on my radar. First one I want to share with you guys is Five-Part Invention by Andrea J. Buchanan. This one is a debut novel. We're actually following 5 different generations, which, you know me, I love a very good multi-generational story. What made me interested in this one is the first character we're following. Her name is LEECH. She is a pianist. She ends up having this nervous breakdown early on in her marriage, and to punish her, her husband takes away her piano. Yeah, that I need to see where that goes because that already has me very mad. So this act of trying to protect her slash jealousy and I just need to see where this is going. Next, we have Honey and Spice by Bolu Babalola. I read Bolu's short story collection last year, Love and Color, which was like these myth retellings, and this is her, I believe, first debut novel. In this novel, we're following a young Black British woman, and she has no interest in love, but unexpectedly, she finds herself caught up in a fake relationship with the man that her girlfriends warned her about. I have said this many times before, romance-centered stories are not ones that I typically find myself gravitating towards or really picking up a lot, but occasionally there are ones that do interest me, and especially with me having read her short story collection before, I want to go ahead and pick up some more books from this author so I can see how I get on with the full-length novel what they're writing. And then next we have The Light Always Breaks by Angela Jackson Brown. This novel has to do with food, so you know that already is one thing that got me really interested in this novel. It takes place in 1947. We're following Eva. She is the 24-year-old owner of Washington, D.C.'s most famous Black-owned restaurant. Her path crosses with Cortland, a handsome white senator from Georgia. They both find themselves drawn to each other, but the danger of a relationship between a Black woman and a white man from the South could definitely destroy everything that they've been working for as far as their careers go. Next, we have a mystery thriller. This one is The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. I actually haven't read anything from this author before. I've definitely heard of him around here on BookTube, but I haven't picked up any of his books. This one really spoke to me because it's a psychological thriller, which when it comes to thrillers, those are definitely more of my preference and what I lean towards. So we're following Art Barbara, who is this 17-year-old high school loner in the 80s, and he has scoliosis. He's part of this extracurricular club for volunteer pallbearers at poorly attended funerals. He ends up making this new best friend who is really into the club, and she seems like super cool and stuff. The only thing is she's kind of weird is she likes to take pictures of the corpses at the funeral. She is obsessed with New England folklore that involved digging up the dead, and there's other like strange weird things that start happening. So I guess decades later, he's trying to make sense of it all by writing this memoir. And then somehow this friend ends up getting her hands on the manuscript, and she has issues with it and she's making cuts with it. So it seems like very weird, but I think I'm into it. And we have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a science fiction novel. If you guys read The Story Life of A.J. Fikry, that's what the author is very known for. Before, I did read The Story Life of A.J. Fikry, and I remember I enjoyed it, and I was looking forward to another book by this author. We're following 2 friends who are often in love but never lovers. They come together as creative partners in the world of video game design. I'm not really sure where the whole science fiction genre comes into this novel, and I kind of don't want to be spoiled for things. I'm not like reading too deeply into the synopsis, but it does say it's sci-fi, so that's kind of also what made me interested in it, because the story life of AJ Fikry was just, I believe, just straight up contemporary fiction. And we have another mystery thriller. This one is called Unnatural Ends by Christopher Huang. This follows the story of Sir Lawrence Linwood, who was murdered, savagely beaten to death in his own studio with a medieval mace. The murder calls home his 3 adopted children, and they're all heirs to his fortune or property or whatever, and they have to basically see which of the heirs can figure out who murdered him is who gets to inherit everything. Obviously a lot of secrets from the past, and their lives are going to be coming up in this. This sounds very interesting. This gives me Knives Out vibes, so I am down for this one. And we have another mystery thriller. This one is from a very well-known author, Ruth Ware, and that is The It Girl. I feel like I have to definitely put this on my radar, even though I haven't really loved everything I've read from Ruth Ware in the past. I really did enjoy, I believe it was like The Woman in Cabin 10, but there was another one I think I read of hers that I wasn't as into. But I am going into this one to see how I'm feeling about her writing currently. I don't really want to go into this one knowing too much, but we're following a woman on the search for answers a decade after her friend has been murdered. I already know I'm going to be getting the audiobook of this from my library, and this one comes out next month, so I don't want to really spoil possibly what's going to be happening in the book. And then next we have a book that is a horror novel. That is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Another author that I feel like I've heard of before, but I haven't picked anything up from. This one is a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's classic, The Fall of the House of Usher. I feel like I probably should reread that story before I go into this book. I know I read it, but it's so long ago I couldn't even tell you what it was about. So when Alex Easton, a retired soldier, receives word that their childhood friend Madeline Usher is dying, they race to the ancestral home of the Ushers in the remote countryside of Ruritania. There weird things start happening, and I hope it does have some Edgar Allan Poe vibes, because then I know I will enjoy it. Actually, I haven't read any Edgar Allan Poe in a long time, but I do have a book of his that has like some of the short stories and stuff I've been kind of wanting to get to. Then we have another horror novel. I guess this summer is the summer for the mystery thriller horrors, or at least ones that were interesting to me that are coming out. And this one's called Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. This one is described as a darkly gothic thriller. We are following our main character Vera. She is being called home from her mother. They've had this estrangement, but in spite of their memories, she's come back to the home of a serial killer. She's back to face the love she had for her father and the bodies that he buried there beneath the house that he built for their family. And then we have another horror novel, which is very odd because I feel like I hardly ever come across horror novels that I'm really into, but there's a few, I guess, coming out for this year. And the next one is Mary and Awakening of Terror by Nat Cassidy. I think the reason why I don't really reach for a lot of horror novels is because a lot of them lean more into like the supernatural horror, which I'm not really into reading that, or they go into just like, I don't know, I just feel like they're not scary. I feel like the whole point of horror novels are to scare you, and when I'm reading something I just don't get scared. Maybe I'm just numb to it or what, like maybe, I don't even know, because even with TV shows and movies and stuff that are supposed to be scary, they don't often scare me, so I don't know. That's probably why I don't really read a lot of horror novels. This one interested me because it's described as like American Psycho with a pinch of I'll Be Gone in the Dark. We're following Mary, who is this quiet middle-aged woman, and she's just trying to kind of blend in the background. She doesn't try to stand out too much. But lately all these weird things have been happening where she has a lot of hot flashes and body aches, and she can't look in the mirror without passing out. She's discovering that these experiences are echoes of an infamous serial killer, and then the killings begin again, and she's going to have to find out what is happening. Now on to the books that are coming out in the month of August. There are 4 I wanted to share with you guys. So the first one is a mystery thriller. It's called The Rule of 3 by E.G. Scott. In this book we are following 3 women who once a week they get together for a book club. It's in Kingsland, which is this private gated community full of neighbors who are wanting to kind of do their business but away from prying eyes. And then on the same night, their husbands, they meet up to play poker, where more is being planned than anyone thought On this night, something goes wrong. All 3 of the men end up dead or hospitalized, and the entire town is being questioned about what happened. Next, we have The Book Eaters by Sunyi Dean. This book is a fantasy novel, and this one takes place on the Yorkshire moors, where there is a secret line of people for whom books are food, which sounds pretty cool to me. I would live there. And they retain all of a book's content after eating it. To them, spy novels are like a peppery snack, romance novels are sweet and delicious. We're following Devon, who's part of the family, which is an old reclusive clan of book eaters. Devon learns that when her son is born with a rare and darker kind of hunger, not for books, but for human minds. This sounds so good. I have not really heard anything about this book before. But yeah, this sounds like something I will definitely be prioritizing. Then we have a short story collection. It's called Stories from the Tenants Downstairs by Sadiq Fofana. It's being compared to Gloria Naylor's The Women of Brewster Place and Lin-Manuel Miranda's In the Heights. So this is a collection of 8 interconnected stories which showcase the strengths, struggles, and hopes of one residential community, which the community in each I love short stories where they are interconnected and they have that common theme of like maybe like a same neighborhood or something that kind of connects all the short stories. They aren't just like random. And in this one, it's following each of these stories is following a different tenant in the Banneker homes, which is a low-income high-rise in Harlem where gentrification weighs on everybody's minds. Then lastly, for the books coming out in August, we have another mystery thriller that is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I actually don't think I've read any of Alice Feeney's books before. I believe if I get to this one, it will be my first. I could be wrong about that. I'll have to check. So we're following Daisy Darker, who, after years of avoiding each other, their whole family is getting together for their Nana's 80th birthday party. It's taking place at her house, which is this crumbling Gothic house on a tiny tidal island, which definitely sounds like your kind of closed, locked door mystery, and I'm definitely here for that. Finally back together one last time. When the tide comes in, they will be cut off from the world for 8 hours. Each of them arrives with secrets, and then at the stroke of midnight, there is a storm and Nana is found dead. An hour later, another family member follows. They're all trapped on this island. They're being killed one by one, and they have to figure out the present mystery as well as their past secrets if they want to try to get out alive, I guess. Then lastly, the books that are coming out in September, which are quite a few. So the first one is On the Rooftop by Margaret Wilkerson Sexton. I have read one other book by this author before, The Revisioners, which came out a few years ago. In this one, we're following the story of a mother whose dream of musical stardom for her 3 daughters collides with the daughters' own ambitions for themselves, and this is set against the backdrop of gentrifying 1950s San Francisco. Then we have The Attic Child by Lola J. In this one, we're following 2 children who are trapped in the same attic almost a century apart, bound by a shared secret. So the first storyline takes place in the 1900s London. Taken from his homeland, 12-year-old Celestine spends most of the time locked away in the attic of a large house by the sea. And the second timeline takes place in 1974, and we're following a young orphan girl, Laura, who was born into wealth and privilege, but whose fortunes have now changed and finds herself trapped in the same attic. Then we have The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell, who wrote Hamnet, which has been on my shelves far too long, and I need to get to it because I've heard like nothing but good things about that book, so that's why I decided to put this one on the list, even though I haven't read her other book yet. This one is set in Renaissance Italy, and it's centering on the captivating young Duchess Lucrezia de Medici. So this is similar to her other book, a historical novel, I believe kind of like following someone who's actually taken a character from history. And this one takes place in Florence in the 1550s. Lucrezia is the 3rd daughter of the Grand Duke. She's leaving girlhood behind and has to make her way in a troubled court whose customs are not opaque and where her arrival is not welcome. The most mystifying part is her new husband, Alfonso. Is he the playful sophisticate he appeared to be before their wedding, or the aesthete? I don't even know what that word means. Happiest in the company of artists and musicians, or the ruthless politician before whom even his formidable sisters seem to tremble. Next, we have The 2 Lives of Sarah. This one is by Catherine Adele West. This book takes place in 1960s Memphis. We're following a young mother who is finding refuge in a boarding house where family encompasses more than just blood. We're following Sarah King. Save for the secrets and the baby in her belly, she boards the bus from Memphis, hoping to outrun her past in Chicago. She's welcomed with open arms by Mama Sugar, who is the matriarch and owner of the popular boarding house, the Scarlet Poplar. Then we have another horror novel, but this one is in the more young adult age range, and it's called The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson, who I have very much enjoyed Tiffany D. Jackson's books before, and she is one of the young adult authors that I feel like I'm going to continue to pick up their books. In this young adult novel, we're following a biracial teenager as her Georgia high school hosts its first integrated prom. When Springville residents, at least the ones still alive, are questioned about what happened on prom night, they all have the same explanation: Maddie did it. She has always been an outcast and teased by bullies until someone reveals her most closely kept secret, which is that she is biracial and has been passing for white her entire life. I'm not sure what exactly the horror elements in this novel are going to be. Like, I know something happens during prom and a lot of people die, so I guess I'll find that out when I get to this book. Then we have a short story collection by the author Ling Ma. It's called Bliss Montage, which Ling Ma wrote the very popular dystopian novel Severance a few years back, and I remember really reading that one and enjoying it, and definitely wanting to pick up whatever Ling Ma came out with next. So it looks like she's releasing a short story collection. We're following 8 wildly different tales of people making their way through the madness and reality of our collective delusions. The synopsis is very vague, so I don't really know exactly what kind of short stories we're going to be reading in this, but it doesn't matter because I already know I'm going to read it. Then we have How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water by Angie Cruz. The author of this has wrote previously Dominicana, which I liked, and so I wanted to pick up her next novel. In this one, we're following a woman who has lost everything but the chance to finally tell her story. So our main character, her name is Cara Romero. She wants to work. She thought she would work at the factory of little lamps for the rest of her life, but in the mid-50s, she loses her job in the Great Recession, and then she's forced back into the job market for the first time in decades. She's set up with a job counselor, and she begins to narrate the story of her life. Then we have People Person by Candace Carty Williams. This author previously wrote Queenie, and I remember really enjoying that, so now I'm picking up her next novel. And this one, I know Queenie was kind of one of those really divisive novels when it came out. Like, people either loved it or hated it. There wasn't so many people in between. So I'm really interested to see what happens with this one. It seems like this book is going to be centered around family. We're following our main character, Dimple Pennington, and she knows of her half-siblings, but she doesn't really know them. We're following the 5 people who don't have anything in common except for the faint memories of being driven through Brixton in their dad's gold Jeep and some pretty complex abandonment issues. And we have The Birdcatcher by Gail Jones. I actually just finished reading Corregidora by Gail Jones, and I didn't even realize that Gail Jones was still publishing, so that's really cool. When I had bought the books, it's like I hadn't heard of her as an author before. Just that Toni Morrison had highly recommended her as an author to check out. This book is primarily set on the island of Visa, and it's narrated by the writer Amanda Wordlaw, whose closest friend, a gifted sculptor, is repeatedly institutionalized for trying to kill her husband, who never leaves her. The 3 form a quirky triangle, the Whitewashed Island. It's a study in Black women's creativity, expression, and the intensity of their relationships. Okay, the next book we have is a mystery thriller, but this one is actually a book in translation. The author is Howell Dicker, and the translator is Robert Bonono. In this book, we're following a burnt-out thriller writer who is desperate to regain his creative spark. So he becomes intrigued by this decade-old unsolved mystery that happened at this really glamorous upscale Alpine hotel. One night, a corpse was found in room 622 on this luxury resort. Years later, this novelist is arriving to recover from a bad breakup and mourn the death of his longtime publisher, while also trying to hopefully begin a new novel. And while trying to figure out what he's going to do with his next book, he decides he's going to put his little Sherlock Holmes skills to the test and try and figure out what happened all those years ago at this luxury resort that led to the murder. Then we have The House Party by Rita Cameron. This one is a fiction novel. It's follows the story of this house party that goes terribly wrong in the suburbs, where it's being described as for fans of like Little Fires Everywhere and Ask Again Yes. So basically there's this huge party, it's the party of the year that happens, and afterwards nothing is ever the same for their neighborhood and community. Then we have another mystery thriller, no surprise. I have so many in this video, so I really hope you guys like mystery thrillers. This one is called Sometimes People Die, and this one is about when too many patients die under a troubled young doctor's watch. People suspect murder. This one is a psychological thriller. We're following this young doctor who's returning to his practice after being suspended for stealing opioids. He takes the only job he could find, which is a post as a physician at the struggling St. Luke's Hospital in East London. It just seems like way too many patients are dying and a murderer may be lurking in plain sight. Next, we have LEECH by Hiren Enns. I hope I'm saying that name right. Probably not. This one is a sci-fi novel, and it is this author's debut novel. This one is described as like a gothic science fiction book, so if I hear that, I'm definitely going to be interested. We're following the story that takes place in this isolated chateau far north, and the Baron's doctors died. The doctor's replacement has a mystery to solve. He's trying to discover how the Institute lost track of its many bodies. So for hundreds of years, this medical institute was shaping doctors and replacing basically every human practitioner of medicine. They are there to help humanity and try to protect the species from the apocalyptic horrors their ancestors unleashed. I think it has something to do with like a parasite or something is what the sci-fi element is, but I'm not for sure. Last but not least, we are on to the final book that I want to share with you guys today. I really enjoyed the cover on this one. It's called The Furrows by Namwali Serpell. I actually have another book by this author on my shelves right now. It's called The Old Drift. I have not gotten to it yet. We're following 12-year-old Cassandra Williams and her little brother Wayne is 7. One day when they're alone together, there's an accident and Wayne's lost forever and his body is never recovered. The father ends up leaving and starting another family elsewhere. The mom, she can't give up hope, and she starts an organization dedicated to missing children. As she grows older, Catherine feels like she sees her brother's face everywhere, and she feels like he's out there somewhere. And one day she meets this man who's very mysterious, but he seems very familiar as well, and that man's name is Wayne. So it looks like this novel is definitely going to be a study of grief. I don't know if necessarily her brother is actually alive or anything. The synopsis doesn't say, as that would be a spoiler, I guess. But yes, just definitely a look at grief and how it can affect the dynamics of a family. So those are all of the books that I wanted to share with you guys today. There were so many. I'm so excited to get to these. Well, at least as many of them as I can. There's so many good books that are coming out in the next 3 months that I'm just so excited to get to them. I don't actually own any of the books I shared with you guys today. You know, if anybody publishers want to send me them, I will happily send them my way, but otherwise I'll be most likely checking out most of these through my library app as either ebooks or audiobooks. You know, helps me save money, and also I just really don't have a lot of shelf space right now, so that helps as well too. Let me know if there's any books that are coming out in the next 3 months that I didn't mention that you guys are interested in, or which of these you want me to prioritize reading over the next few months. I loved being able to share these books with you guys, and I hope to talk to you all again soon. We'll see you later. Bye!